Picture this. You decide to cut off all contact. Silence, distance, inner strength. But suddenly a thought arises, what if she's doing the exact same thing? That's when fear sets in. That's when doubt eats away. And that's when the true psychological game begins. The greatest battle is not against the other but against oneself. Seneca. So what should you do? How do you navigate this silent duel? 1. Psychological analysis. No contact is not merely a tactic in the realm of relationships. It is a deliberate exercise in emotional rebalancing, a conscious choice to reclaim your mind, your energy, and your sense of self. Far too often, people treat no contact as a superficial game, a test of who wins by silence. But silence in this context is not a battlefield. It is a laboratory, a space to observe, to reflect, and to reconstruct your inner landscape. When she enters silence too, many instinctively perceive it as a threat. Thoughts spiral. Is she moving on? Does she even care? This is the mind's natural inclination, to assign motive, to seek evidence, to fill the void with assumptions. But here lies the critical distinction. The silence of another is not your enemy, it is a reflection of their own process, independent of your worth or actions. Consider this. In moments of no contact, you are confronted with the raw mirror of your desires, insecurities, and habits. Ask yourself honestly, are you truly using this time to cultivate resilience and clarity, or are you secretly seeking quick validation? Are your thoughts consumed with imagining her actions, her feelings, her possible strategies? If so, the silence becomes a trap. You are allowing external uncertainty to dictate your inner state. The analytical mind benefits from a clear framework here. Think of no contact as a three-dimensional vector of growth. Emotional recalibration. You must identify your emotional triggers. What makes you anxious in silence? What sparks longing or doubt? Behavioral observation. Use the absence to notice recurring patterns in your own responses. How do you react to uncertainty? Do you chase, withdraw, or ruminate? Cognitive restructuring. Challenge the assumptions that arise. Are your fears based on reality or on projection and habit? He who knows others is learned. He who knows himself is wise. Lao Tzu. Lao Tzu's wisdom here is crucial. The study of the other is informative, but the study of oneself is transformative. The real power of no contact is in its potential to reveal who you are when external validation disappears. Every thought, every impulse, every pang of doubt is a signal. Treat it not as an enemy to suppress but as data to analyze. Now, imagine the silence not as a void, but as a mirror that reflects your internal state. Every hour you spend obsessing over what she might be thinking or feeling is an opportunity lost. The challenge is to shift focus inward. If she has chosen to embrace silence, let it be a lesson in detachment, not a trigger for anxiety. At the same time, recognize the subtle psychological mechanisms at play. Humans are wired for interpersonal feedback loops. When communication ceases, the mind automatically attempts to reconstruct missing data. This is why the urge to text, to check, to probe is so intense. But resisting this impulse is where the transformation occurs. By observing your cravings without acting on them, you strengthen your emotional control. Let us also examine the cognitive distortions that often arise in this scenario. Catastrophizing. Imagining the worst possible scenario about her feelings or actions. Mind reading. Assuming you know her motives or intentions without evidence. All or nothing thinking. Believing that her silence is proof of total disinterest or rejection. Analyzing these distortions logically, you can dismantle them. They are habits of thought, not facts. Your challenge is to differentiate between what is real and what is imagined, which is the cornerstone of emotional maturity. Furthermore, the silence creates what psychologists call a space of cognitive flexibility. Without constant interaction, you are no longer trapped in habitual patterns of reacting emotionally. Instead, you gain agency over your responses. This is the moment to experiment. Try reframing longing as curiosity, anxiety as data, and absence as freedom. Another key element is the recognition of projection. Often, we assign to the other person the thoughts and feelings we most fear in ourselves. By noticing these projections, you gain clarity about your true desires and insecurities. The act of self-reflection transforms the experience from one of passive suffering into active understanding. Ultimately, every hour of silence is a choice point. You can allow it to erode your confidence, or you can treat it as a crucible for growth. The world may not provide constant validation, but you can cultivate self-reliance and insight within this space. And here lies the subtle genius of no contact. The external situation matters far less than your internal management. What she does, whether she responds, ignores, or remains silent, is peripheral. What you do with this time, how you observe, interpret, and act upon your inner landscape, defines the outcome far more than any message ever could. Every silence is a mirror. What she does is not the center. What you do with this time is the real challenge. In practice, this analytical mindset means journaling, meditating, and engaging in reflective exercises. Ask questions like, what am I learning about my attachment patterns? Which fears are truly mine, and which are borrowed from assumptions about her? How can I emerge from this silence stronger and more self-aware than before? Through consistent observation and logical reflection, no contact transforms from a passive tactic into a profound psychological strategy, one that not only preserves dignity but also cultivates self-mastery. By embracing the analytical approach, you start to see silence not as deprivation, but as a rich opportunity for understanding cause and effect within your own psyche. Every thought, every pang of desire, every impulse to reach out is data. Interpreted wisely, it reveals patterns and triggers that, once understood, empower you far beyond the relationship itself. 2. Philosophical perspective. Close your eyes for a moment. Let the world soften around you. The air feels different here, not heavy with expectation, not pressing with demand. Now, turn your awareness inward and imagine the space between you and her. Not as a void, not as a fracture to fill, but as a presence in itself, an unspoken territory where your minds and hearts exist parallel yet separate. In that silence there is meaning. In that absence there is potential. She walks her path and you walk yours. You are not adversaries. You are travelers, each moving through the intricate labyrinth of self-discovery. And it is within this silent interval that profound truths quietly reveal themselves. Two souls in silence. Not two voices clashing or two bodies divided, but two essences coexisting, each observing, reflecting, and evolving. The quiet between you is not empty, it resonates. It is a language of its own, subtle, persistent, and infinitely rich. Every heartbeat, every thought, every moment of stillness is a note in a symphony that speaks louder than any spoken word. Silence is sometimes the best answer. Dalai Lama. This is not just a saying, it is a philosophy to embody. For in silence there is clarity. In silence, there is freedom from the endless cycle of expectation and reaction. And in silence, there is the opportunity to witness yourself, not the persona shaped for another, not the mask worn for approval, but the raw, unfiltered essence of who you are. Now pose the question to yourself, can you endure this silence without collapsing? Not with bitterness. Not with frantic longing. Not with the trembling hope of validation. Can you let the absence stand unchallenged and allow it to teach rather than torment you? Can you sit in the stillness and face the stirrings of your mind, the waves of doubt, the flickers of desire, the shadows of loneliness, without succumbing to them? To walk alone in this way is not a mere act of resistance. It is a profound journey inward. You become, in a sense, a warrior of the mind. This warrior does not wield swords or shields. The weapon is awareness, the armor is self-possession, and the battlefield is the landscape of thought and feeling. Notice how easily the human mind seeks validation. We long for affirmation in the presence of another, clinging to gestures, words, and attention as if they were lifelines. Yet in this silence, all external signals are stripped away. You are left with pure self-consciousness, the raw encounter with your own being. It is here, in this exposure, that growth whispers its deepest truths. Philosophers through the ages have recognized the transformative power of such solitude. Marcus Aurelius spoke of withdrawing from the crowd to observe life clearly, to see what truly matters without distortion. Rumi described the soul's journey as a dance between longing and emptiness, where absence becomes the canvas on which the heart discovers its true color. In modern terms, psychologists call this reflective solitude, a deliberate turning inward to cultivate resilience, emotional intelligence, and self-mastery. The silence between you is therefore not a punishment, it is an invitation. An invitation to examine the quality of your own thoughts. To ask, what am I seeking in her silence? Is it connection, or is it a mirror to the parts of myself I have not yet known? Each pang of longing is a signal, each doubt a guidepost, each flicker of hope a chance to observe the patterns of attachment and desire that shape your inner world. Imagine the space itself. Stretch it in your mind until it becomes vast, almost infinite. Visualize it filled with light or shadow, with wind or stillness, whatever resonates with your inner state. This is your landscape, created not by circumstance but by perception. And within it, her presence is not diminished by absence. It is transformed, ethereal, a ghost of potential rather than a tether of expectation. Can you walk this path alone? Can you navigate this internal terrain without relying on her responses, without leaning on her approval as a measure of your worth? This is the essence of what it means to inhabit the silence fully, to find that your existence, your value, and your peace are independent of any other soul. And yet, paradoxically, this independence does not isolate. It connects. For in embracing your own depth, you are also opening a doorway to empathy, understanding, and genuine presence in the world. You no longer act from fear or neediness. You respond from clarity. You engage not from attachment but from alignment with your own inner compass. The poetic rhythm of this perspective lies in noticing subtle movements, the quiet rise of curiosity, the gentle echo of patience, the slow unfolding of insight. Each day of silence becomes a stanza, each moment of reflection a line in a poem written by your own consciousness. And over time, this poem reveals a truth often overlooked. The space between souls is not a gap, but a bridge, if one is willing to walk it with awareness and courage. So breathe. Feel the air, the subtle pull of life moving through you. Witness the silence, not as absence, but as a profound presence that teaches, shapes, and illuminates. Let it show you the strength you did not know you possessed, the clarity that comes when expectation falls away, and the quiet power of being fully, uncompromisingly yourself. Here, in the poetic stillness, the question persists, not as a torment but as a guide. Can you walk alone like a warrior of the mind without needing the other to validate your existence? It is not merely a question. It is a practice, a meditation, a philosophical inquiry that stretches across time, echoing the wisdom of sages, mystics, and thinkers who have walked the path of inner discovery. And in this practice, the silence speaks. Not in words, but in truths deeper than any conversation. It is a teacher, a mirror, and a canvas. And if you lean into it fully, you begin to perceive the subtle poetry of life itself, the cadence, the rhythm, the vastness that exists when you are willing to listen. 3. Strategic approach. If she's also applying no contact, the first principle you must embrace is consistency. This is not a theoretical suggestion, it is a fundamental strategy. Breaking your silence, even once, out of anxiety, doubt, or the mere impulse to check in, undermines the power of the method. Consistency signals emotional stability, self-control, and intentionality. It communicates that your life, your focus, and your actions are not dependent on external validation, but on your own inner framework. Ask yourself, why do you feel the urge to reach out? Is it fear of loss? Desire for reassurance? Loneliness? These impulses are natural, but if acted upon prematurely, they reduce the psychological advantage of no contact. Think of it as a form of emotional fencing. You are not building walls out of hostility, you are creating space for equilibrium, for clarity, and for self-realignment. Next comes investment in your own growth. This is where no contact transcends mere strategy and becomes a transformative experience. Growth is multidimensional: mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual. Mental growth. Read widely, study ideas that challenge your assumptions, and refine your understanding of human behavior. Philosophy, psychology, and literature are tools to expand perspective. Knowledge strengthens reasoning and reduces reactive impulses. Emotional growth. Meditation, journaling, and reflection cultivate emotional resilience. Learn to observe thoughts without judgment, to distinguish between urgent feelings and transient emotions, and to manage attachment energy consciously. Physical growth. Your body is inseparable from your mind. Exercise, proper nutrition, and restorative sleep enhance clarity, focus, and presence. Physical discipline mirrors mental and emotional discipline. Spiritual growth. This does not require religion. It requires connection to your core values, your sense of purpose, and the recognition of your own intrinsic worth. Practices such as mindfulness, contemplation, or even deliberate silence deepen awareness of the self beyond external relationships. When you engage in personal growth during no contact, you become a magnet of presence rather than a beggar of attention. Your energy no longer revolves around anticipating her actions. It revolves around mastering your own. This shift is subtle but profound. Transformation is rarely visible in a day, but it is always felt by those who encounter it. Another essential strategy is creating mystery. Mystery is not manipulation. It is a natural byproduct of living fully and independently. Your absence should spark curiosity, not pity. When a person senses that your attention, energy, and focus are grounded within yourself rather than directed solely toward them, intrigue arises naturally. Mystery is created not through secrecy or games, but through authentic self-containment. To cultivate this effectively, avoid over-explaining your actions. Let silence carry its weight. Focus conversations on substance, not neediness. Maintain activities, social connections, and personal projects that demonstrate fulfillment beyond the relationship. The practical impact is clear. Your autonomy becomes more compelling than your availability. When she observes your calm, purposeful detachment, she experiences the contrast between dependency and independence. Human psychology is deeply influenced by contrast. When someone expects engagement and receives none, curiosity and respect naturally increase. Why does this matter? Because in the strategic landscape of no contact, the one who holds out the longest in silence holds the power of transformation. It is not a game of revenge, nor a contest of willpower for its own sake. It is the disciplined application of presence over absence, of self-command over reaction, and of intentionality over impulse. Let's analyze the mechanism at work here. Control over emotional state. By maintaining silence and resisting the urge to act on fear or longing, you demonstrate mastery over your own emotions. Emotional self-control is inherently attractive and generates influence without coercion. Observation and assessment. No contact allows you to watch patterns without interference. You see tendencies, triggers, and behaviors clearly. Clarity enables informed decisions rather than reactive behaviors. Internal reinforcement. Each day you maintain composure strengthens your internal locus of control. You are no longer dependent on external cues for validation. Instead, your own actions, growth, and focus provide reinforcement. Consistency, growth, and mystery are not isolated strategies. They interlock to create momentum. A single action without the others has limited impact. Silence without growth feels like emptiness. Growth without consistency becomes unstructured and weak. Mystery without internal depth is hollow. But together they form a powerful triad that shifts the dynamic entirely. Consider the subtle psychological influence this has on both parties. She may feel the absence, notice the change, and experience curiosity or reflection about the dynamics between you. Meanwhile, you are expanding your agency and freeing your mind from the emotional turbulence of constant engagement. The dynamic transforms from reactive dependency into strategic equilibrium. Practical applications also include managing internal narratives. Every thought like "she must be thinking about me," or "I need to reach out" should be acknowledged, analyzed, and either released or reframed. For example, "I feel the urge to text." Observation: this is an attachment signal. Action: redirect focus to personal growth. "I wonder what she's doing." Observation: this is a cognitive distortion. Action: accept uncertainty as a space for personal mastery. Even mundane daily activities become tactical exercises. How do you respond to triggers? How do you fill your time meaningfully? How do you manage moments of loneliness or doubt without breaking your focus? These are training grounds for resilience. Ultimately, the strategic approach is deceptively simple. Do not break your silence, invest in yourself, and maintain an aura of autonomy and intrigue. The external world cannot dictate your emotional state. Your actions, discipline, and self-possession do. By embodying this principle consistently, you are no longer reactive. You are proactive in shaping both your inner life and the relational dynamics around you. The power of no contact is therefore not in what is done for her, but in what is cultivated within you. Every day of disciplined silence, every effort toward growth, and every intentional act of presence builds a foundation of psychological strength and influence. This is the essence of the strategic approach. Clarity, action, and mastery converge in the quiet, producing results that are felt, observed, and ultimately transformative. Because the truth is simple, the one who holds out the longest in silence holds the power of transformation. 4. Introspection. Look at yourself in the mirror. Really look. Not just at the reflection of your face, but at the flickers in your eyes, the tension in your jaw, the restless energy that courses through your body. What do you see? Is it confidence, or is it fear masquerading as action? Is it serenity, or a quiet storm of longing and doubt? Ask yourself the most difficult question you can. Does your need to break the silence come from love, or from the fear of being forgotten? This is not a question to answer lightly. It demands honesty, courage, and a willingness to confront the shadows that linger in the corners of your psyche. Too often we confuse attachment with affection. We mistake anxiety for passion. And we act, repeatedly, from impulses rooted in fear rather than choice. Fear is the path to the dark side. Yoda. Consider the weight of that wisdom. Fear is not merely an emotion. It is a force that shapes decisions, distorts perception, and enslaves the mind. Every impulse to reach out, Every thought of what is she thinking? Does she even care? Is an invitation to surrender to fear. And yet, this very fear, when observed and understood, is also a teacher. It illuminates what we most value, what we most depend upon for our sense of worth, and where our courage must grow. Now shift your perspective slightly. Imagine that the silence is not a punishment, not a void, not a test imposed by someone else, but a deliberate initiation. A sacred threshold. Every moment of quiet, every pang of longing, every flicker of doubt is a step through a doorway into a new version of yourself. Stronger, freer, more aware of the patterns that have unconsciously governed your choices. This initiation is subtle. It does not announce itself with fanfare. It whispers in small, almost imperceptible ways. The first moment when you resist the urge to check your phone. The first time you notice your thoughts wandering to fear and redirect them to curiosity or self-growth. The first time you feel the stirrings of longing but do not act upon them. These are the rites of passage. Each is a quiet act of mastery over your own mind. Look deeper. The need to be remembered, to be validated, to be noticed, these are not weaknesses. They are the raw materials of transformation. They are the signals pointing to where attachment has been mistaken for identity. When you engage with them consciously, when you observe them without judgment, you are pulling apart the threads of dependency, examining them and weaving them anew into resilience, autonomy, and self-respect. Silence becomes a mirror of your true self. What you feel when no one is observing you, when no one is responding, when there is no external echo. Is this not the purest measure of who you are? Can you tolerate the emptiness, the lack of feedback, and still find stability within yourself? Can you generate meaning and value from the core of your being rather than the reflection in another's eyes? Consider the metaphor of the sculptor. The silence is the chisel. Your mind, your habits, your impulses, and your fears are the raw marble. Each moment of restraint, each act of reflection, each conscious choice not to react chips away at illusion, revealing form, structure, and depth. Over time, the figure that emerges is a self that is unshakable, composed, and free, a masterpiece shaped not by others, but by deliberate, intimate engagement with your own consciousness. Ask yourself, too, what does freedom truly feel like? Is it the absence of desire or the mastery of it? Is it the removal of need or the creation of self-sufficiency? Every time you resist the pull of anxiety, every time you allow silence to teach rather than torment, you step closer to a state where your peace is internal, unassailable, and not contingent upon external circumstances. This journey is not linear. There will be moments of regression, of impatience, of raw longing. Do not fear these moments, they are the terrain of growth. To confront them honestly is to practice courage. To observe them without judgment is to cultivate wisdom. To navigate them deliberately is to assert sovereignty over your inner life. And in this sovereignty lies a paradoxical gift. The deeper your self-possession, the more effortless your relationships become. When the mind is no longer tethered to reaction, when desire is tempered by awareness, connection transforms from dependency into authenticity. You engage not to fill a void, but to share abundance. You act not from fear, but from choice. Consider this. What would it feel like if the silence had no power over you at all? If each longing thought were met with curiosity rather than panic? If each fear were acknowledged and then released? The freedom is radical. It is quiet. It is profound. And it begins here, in this intimate conversation with yourself, in the mirror of your own awareness. The initiation that silence offers is not measured by days or weeks. It is measured by moments of conscious mastery, by the ability to observe, reflect, and choose consistently. The process is slow, often invisible, but it is inexorably powerful. Finally, remember that this is your journey, and your courage defines it. She may or may not be experiencing the same silence, but that is irrelevant. What matters is the transformation that occurs entirely within you, in the space where external validation is absent, where fear can be faced, and where the soul is invited to grow. Have you considered that this silence might be your initiation? A doorway to a new version of yourself, stronger, freer. It is not a test of endurance for the sake of endurance. It is a pathway to self-realization, a conscious engagement with the parts of you that have long sought freedom, courage, and clarity. Each reflective pause, each moment of honesty with yourself, is a step into this new self. A self that does not tremble at absence, that does not chase after approval, and that stands firm in its own sovereignty. Silence, in this intimate dimension, is no longer a strategy or a tactic. It is a teacher, a mirror, and a gateway, and your willingness to engage with it fully determines how profoundly you emerge from it transformed. So, if she's also doing no contact, the answer is not in reaction. The answer is in transformation. Hold firm. Become greater than this silence. Prove to yourself that you don't need to depend on an outside response. There is only one way to freedom: contempt for what does not depend on us. Epictetus. Silence is not your enemy. It is your teacher. And if you embrace it, it will be your liberator.